Hi, I'm John Nash, and welcome to Cafe UCEA. Since 2003, the UCEA Barbara L. Jackson Scholars Network has been providing a formal 2-year networking, mentoring, and professional development experience for graduate students of color who plan to pursue an academic career in the field of ed leadership or promote the mission of ed leadership. And the success of this program is predicated on great mentoring, which doesn't happen on a whim. For instance, how is mentoring different from other relationships that scholars have? And what are the reciprocal benefits to mentoring and for the mentor and the mentee? And what makes a good match? And how do you stay engaged in the process over long periods of time, over far distances, which really marks many of the mentoring relationships we find Jackson scholars going through nowadays. We're going to spend the next 20 to 30 minutes trying to unpack some of this, and you can participate during our live program by watching this via Google+. At the bottom right of the video window, click Ask a New Question, then type your question and click Submit. We'll do our best to answer it during the show. Today, my guests are Dr. Bruce Barnett, a professor in the Educational Leadership and Policy Studies Department at the University of Texas at San Antonio, and Dr. Mariela Rodriguez, Associate Dean of the Graduate School and Director of Teaching, Learning, and Professional Development, also at the University of Texas at San Antonio. Bruce, welcome to Cafe UCEA.
Thank you.
Mariela, thanks for being on Cafe UCEA.
Thanks for having us, John.
Sure. So, Bruce, I'd like to start with you. Tell me a little bit about how mentoring is different from other relationships.
Well, you know, when you hear mentoring, people say, well, it's the same thing as coaching or counseling, but it's really pretty different. And the way we're using mentoring in the Jackson Scholar Program is exactly the way it's meant to be, because mentoring is about career development and advancement. So, and I think we have a slide you might even want to show, John, that kind of makes a distinction between mentoring, coaching, and counseling.
Yeah.
And essentially, the big difference is mentoring is longer term, and it's really the idea that you're helping a novice work their way through going up through a kind of the career ladder. And you can see in that chart that really the right-hand side, the far right hand, is where you're really creating career opportunities and really focusing on their career and development. Whereas coaching is usually shorter term, and so you might coach a person, for example, when they're getting ready for a job interview. So I know Mariela and I have both done that before. Some of our mentees have done that. So really the mentor relationship is about getting people ready for that new job that they're going to be seeking after graduation.
What do you see as some of the reciprocal benefits to mentoring for the mentor and the mentee?
Well, I think the reciprocal benefits definitely come from both of the mentor and mentee being seasoned professionals, in the sense that I know in the cases of the Jackson Scholars that I've worked with, my mentees have been seasoned professionals in the public schools as school leaders who are now transitioning into a doctoral program and then possibly into academe. So I see it as a respectful, reciprocal, professional engagement in which I, as the mentor, provide support through what it is like to be an academe, what it's like to publish, how to build a research agenda and network. But then I also understand that I also learn from the mentee, especially in the Barbara Jackson Scholars Network, where many of them have been previously school principals, assistant principals, and being able then to keep up to date with what's going on in the public schools, and that information then also helps me with my own research.
We talked a little bit in preparing for this program today about the different kinds of mentoring styles that exist out there. Bruce, do you want to talk a little bit about how those are different and how they progress across the different style categories?
Yeah, usually it's really you're building a relationship with another person. And there have been some people who've looked at kind of long-term mentoring relationship, and they ought to change. Your mentoring relationship would look different at the beginning versus the middle versus the end. So the mentoring style chart that has been posted gives you a sense. This really comes a little bit from the business world, but essentially in the beginning, you may as a mentor be doing more of the talking and directing as a person is learning, but then you'll notice as you keep moving to the right on the chart, the mentee, or the person being mentored, the Jackson Scholar in this case, becomes more confident and takes more ownership in what the relationship is about. Because ultimately, the goal of this is that you'll see on the far right, a mentee who's confident, competent, and ready to go on their own and not needing your advice and counsel as much. So I like that notion because I think it really shows that the relationship will grow and change over time.
Yes, and I think in addition to that, what we also have to consider is that many of our former Jackson Scholars are now Jackson Scholar mentors themselves.
Right.
And so I think it's great to see that not only have they benefited from a particular mentoring style, but then are able to add their own approach when working with their mentees now.
So there must be some way to think about the match between the mentor and the mentee. What sorts of things make a good mentor match? Chemistry isn't always guaranteed, isn't that the case?
Correct.
Well, I think first with the match, we would have to look at similar backgrounds, professional experiences, the ideas of maybe certain regions of the country, or in particular, research agendas. I think those play a critical role in the sense that as a mentor, I'm more easily available to speak with someone about a research agenda that I also have familiarity with and experience with. Or perhaps it's maybe not the topic, but in the research design. And so in that manner, I feel that I can make my mentorship more personable, more tailored to what the mentee needs. And so to me, that's part of the fit with the research agenda.
Yeah, I've actually had a few mentees assigned to me that really are in different areas. For example, the last two have been people who are really in higher education administration, and I'm more in K-12. So I really would echo what Mariela said about that's allowed me to learn about some new research that they're doing in a different field, which has kind of been really good for me. I think, though, the match has to be that the mentor has to realize that their job is to help the person negotiate what they're going through in their current program to finish, and then how do they negotiate that job and that job market. And even though we may not have exactly the same research agenda, mentors have had enough of experience about what it's like to go through doctoral programs, as well as what it means to put your best foot forward when you go on the job market. So I find, for me, that's the most exciting. So it doesn't really matter to me as much if they're not in my field. It's how can I get them ready for preparing themselves to put their best foot forward when they go on for job prospects.
Mm-hmm. How do you assess a mentee's direction and what their desires are? And is there some process by which you start to think about the viability of those interests? And talk to us a little bit about how that
good question
goes.
Good question.
Sure, I think we can both touch on that. I know with me it's asking certain probing questions of my mentee in our getting to know each other process. I know very recently over the weekend we were just assigned our new Barbara Jackson Scholar mentees, so excited about that. And so it's just getting to know them and getting to not only hear about their professional backgrounds, but obviously their professional goals. And then asking about their research in the sense that who have they worked with, who are they working with, and what their current research network looks like. And then that way I can expand from there. Bruce?
Yeah, absolutely. What I do, and I asked my mentees to send me their CV, so I just got my new one this morning, and we're going to talk later this week. And part of it, I think, our job in the beginning is ask lots of questions. Ask about, what are you interested in? What is confusing you? What do you think you need? How often do you think we ought to talk? And if so, about what? So I think what you want to do is give as much responsibility to the Jackson Scholar as much as possible so they can shape it. Because I've found, depending on who you're mentoring, they'll have different needs. And we don't have a needs assessment inventory that we give to them. So I think a lot of it, you've got to be a good listener to listen to what they need. So the more you can get them talking early on, the better, I've found.
Consider aspects of sustaining a relationship, don't you? The mentees, excuse me, in the Jackson Scholars Program are involved for 2 years. Isn't that correct?
Correct. Right.
And so, how do you stay engaged in the process over long periods of time, and also where there are instances of distance involved?
Right. I know that in my case, I try to communicate via Skype with my mentees, that because they are in different parts of the country than where we are, and so are able to maintain that face-to-face focus. Definitely touching base at the annual UCEA conference and at AERA, that both have Jackson Scholar activities associated with them, so we're able to touch base in person at those conferences, but are able to engage either through Skype, other social media, and definitely a text of motivation every now and then, and how are things going.
Yeah, I would really echo what Mariela says. I think that the activities that are at UCEA, especially when you're getting to meet your mentee for the first time, those are invaluable. I just find those to be so helpful as a ground, kind of an icebreaker to get to know that person. What I find is in looking at what a student or a mentee is doing is I look at what are some milestones coming up for them. Gee, I have a comprehensive exam, I have a proposal, I have my dissertation, etc. And I'll find out from them when is it that's going to happen. And then we kind of use those milestones as times to touch base. So I typically have not talked with my mentee every month, but there's an upcoming event that's going on. They may be going for a job interview. So we may contact via Skype. Skype has been really, really helpful to do that. And I've been able, and I think Mariela and many of the other mentors, Jackson Scholar mentors, have been able to connect with people, you know, face to face. That does make a big time difference, I think, in terms of communicating. So I've used it for milestones as people have been going for job interviews, key points in their program, and maybe even when they end up starting a new job, is talking with them a little bit about that and what they're looking forward to as they start a new position. So I think part of it is kind of always keeping them on your radar, but not overburdening them with, you know, weekly or monthly messages.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is Cafe UCEA, and my guests are Dr. Bruce Barnett and Dr. Mariela Rodriguez of UT San Antonio. You can participate in our live program if you're watching us on Google+. At the bottom right of the video window, click Ask a New Question, then type a question and click Submit. We'll do our best to answer it during the show. Tell me a little bit about some suggestions regarding other topics of conversation with mentees in making a relationship. I know that sometimes young scholars are making their first mentor-mentee relationship in the Jackson Scholars Program and may not have local mentors in their own program, or they may already have something. And so how might this be balanced, and what suggestions do you have for those young scholars to make relationships locally?
Yes, I'll go ahead and start with that one. Actually, with my very current mentee that was just assigned over the weekend, I replied to her email, her introductory email, and said, oh, well, now that I know what your research is interested in, I have some colleagues down the road who are also doing similar things, and I'm going to put you in touch with them because they have a great summer conference about what it is you do, and you need to read their work, and so on and so on. So, I mean, that's not local, that's someone else outside of her state, but I think it's key for the mentors, especially with the Jackson Scholars Network, to help them expand that professional community in the sense that not only can we connect them with others outside their state, but definitely with faculty within their own programs, which I think is the beauty of the UCEA network in general, is that, you know, Bruce and I probably do know who their dissertation chair is, and we probably do know some of the folks that they work with in their faculty, and thus are able then to provide a net, if you will, of support.
Yeah, well, the only thing I'd add to that, I think good mentors are sponsors. And here's what I mean by that. Our job is to open doors for people who need them open for them. So that may be, as Mariela says, people for a conference. An example I'd have is recently my mentee was at LSU, but as she finished her program, she moved back home to Miami. Well, she didn't have a university there. She wanted to connect with other doc students, so I contacted a person that I know in one of the other UCEA institutions there, talked to him, and he said, oh, I do have an ongoing doc research team. I'd love to have her be part of that. She's also now been able to get library privileges at that institution. So I think that's our job, is to network for them and open up doors that they would never see opening before, which really I think parallels what Mariela is saying.
Definitely.
Yes.
Are there any kinds of thorny or difficult issues that you've helped mentees handle? Maybe there's a case where a mentee is applying to their own mentor's institution ultimately for a job, or they're looking for a reference, things that might be on their minds that they're not sure how to broach, but maybe aren't so difficult if they just knew the path.
Well, we talked about that. Actually, we said, well, Bruce, have you had one of those thorny issues? And I'm like, well, no, I don't know if I have either, but we'll try our best with that one. I think what sometimes can happen is that the person may say, well, how do I approach my dissertation chair? You know, he or she is not returning my calls, or how do I get into an appointment with them? And so we may obviously, provide suggestion in the sense that, again, it's in a mentorship process. We are in no way overstepping a boundary or overstepping that lead faculty member. No, our role is to provide suggestion, provide support, and advice as to how the person may approach this faculty member in a professional manner.
Yeah, I think we've got to be real careful with that, because we're not on their committees and we can't get in between that. But I have had some of them share just some of their frustrations about the progress that they're making. So I've just said, well, I find that this has helped when I've had other students here have that problem. So just try to do some of that. You raise a great point, though, about mentees now wanting to maybe come to the same institution where we are. In fact, our institution is going to have some openings. I'm actually going to encourage one of my mentees to apply, because I think she would do great here. Of course, then I'd be glad to write a letter for her, and hopefully that won't hurt her. That'd be the hope.
Yes, I hope not.
Yeah.
So do you both have some thoughts on what educational leadership prep programs could be doing to advance high-quality mentoring, not only for the Jackson Scholars Program, which is going to continue and do well, but as they think about building their own mentoring activities in their own program? What recommendations do you have? What have you learned? What lessons have you learned through this experience?
Good question.
Well, I think it's about love. Is the way that I approach it with my doctoral students. I have many doctoral students that I've been able to graduate, and those who are in process. And it really is, it's a sense that if I didn't love them and felt a connection to their work and to their goals, then I wouldn't be dedicating that time. I mean, I've spent up to midnight at their houses. I've slept over at their homes when we're typing up the last throes of the dissertation, to get them through. And it's part of that, not only a caring relationship, but that understanding the value of them getting done and how that can go forward. I know here at our institution at UT San Antonio, we've had pizza evenings with the doctoral students, some students who then are going on the job talk, do a mock job talk with the fellows in their cohort, and then some faculty attend. We also have students practice their dissertation defense in front of their cohort or other close friends right before. So the students themselves have initiated some of these, and then the faculty have attended.
I think the thing that's different is that programs, and I think ours does a really good job of that, is those students who tell us they want to go into higher education, we provide them with a whole set of other experiences. One of them is we will make sure they get to conferences. And I was so impressed, I think it was when in Washington, D.C., when we had like 1,100 participants, 400 of them were grad students. So to me, that's exactly, because that's the way people are going to learn about the profession, by actually going and meeting other people who they've read about and then presenting their work there. So I think part of our job, and I think other programs do this really well, you can tell those people who've been mentored because they're already been sponsored and they're already starting to do research, they're going to national conferences, they're presenting papers, they're getting their work published, and they're getting introduced to key people around the country. And that's that sponsorship role that programs can do. And I've been very impressed with the faculty here. We have had so many of our grad students go and present with their colleagues or on their own. And it's just, even of those that have chosen not to go into higher ed, they've just found that to be an invaluable experience. So I think that's, and we're not the only program doing it, but I think that's one way programs can really mentor their students outside of the formal coursework.
When you think about the first interactions that a new mentee might have with their mentor, either in the Jackson Scholars Program or maybe a student who's seeking mentorship and wants to know their faculty better, what are some of the things you like to see or hear first? What tips do you have for students to put their best foot forward in a mentoring relationship?
I think the student needs to be purposeful about that first meeting, that point of engagement. Going back to the sense that you can only make one good first impression, right? And so I think if the student is prepared and comes to the faculty member and says, well, this is why I wanted to meet you, or this is why I'm seeking advice, mentorship, or support, and then outlines the reasons and how he or she connects with the faculty member either through professional background or through the research agenda. And in that manner, it keeps it not only professional, but the mentor then sees that the student is focused and serious about engaging in this relationship.
Yeah, I think that's real important, because if you don't do that, you run the risk of the mentor directing everything. And then all of a sudden, the mentee's needs get squashed. And I know, because I'm the same way, that when I first meet a person that's like, wow, I want to learn everything from them. I don't want to be doing the talking. I want them to be doing the talking. But in order to give it some focus and purpose and structure, you need to know as a mentor what some of their needs are. And obviously that's going to evolve, as we showed in that chart. But the more they can give you ideas of what they will find valuable, then I, as a mentor, can be much more focused on how to give that. So I think that's an important beginning point for every mentee, not to just say, well, I'm open to anything. It's, here's some specific things I think you could help me with, say in the first 6 months, and then that might evolve over time.
Mm-hmm. Well, as we wind down our conversation today, are there any parting thoughts that you'd like to leave on this topic of mentoring? Tips either for prospective colleagues of ours that are going to do the mentoring process or for students who are going to enter into it?
Well, I think I have a suggestion in the sense that as mentors, sometimes students feel that we are not approachable or they don't know how to approach it. So I think one way kind of diffuse that situation would be for the mentor to invite the student for a cup of coffee down at the student lounge, or just something to meet either off campus at a coffee house or what have you. And that way they can see us as people and not just as someone who's always in the office and that they feel they can't knock on the door to because they've had like, oh, we walk by, you're always typing. Well, yes, that's what I do. But it's the sense that you can definitely knock on the door and come in. So I think as a mentor, finding a way to kind of diffuse or demystify that connection to get the student to come forward.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that you can do that on your own campus, but then I always try to meet with my mentees at UCEA outside of the formal structured activities. Let's go have a cup of coffee. Let's go have a glass of wine, just to have a little bit different environment with them. The thing I'd say is, if you're asked to be a mentor, do it. Right. It really is, I think we give back a lot from the profession, but as Mariela said before, you get to learn a lot about what new scholars are interested in. And that is a big time benefit for us, to keep us kind of fresh and new in what's going on, and it keeps us involved. So it's not a burden at all. It's something that I always look forward to, and I'm always available. And I know the network that we have is getting bigger and better, so if you're asked, do it. You won't be disappointed.
Definitely.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, Bruce, Mariela, thank you both for being on the show today.
Our pleasure, John. Thanks for asking us.
Thank you, John.
That's our show for today. Cafe UCEA is produced by the University Council for Educational Administration. Marcy Reedy and Angel Nash at the University of Virginia co-produced today's show. An archive of this program and the handouts can be found on the UCEA Google Plus page. I'm John Nash at the University of Kentucky. Thanks, and see you next time.